Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, did you know there's a skill many men never learn that ends up seriously limiting your professional success and satisfaction in your love and sex life? I put together a free guide to explain this unknown skill and give you exactly what you need to use it today. Get it by heading over to ShanaJamesCoaching.com or text the word ALIVE, A-L-I-V-E, to 44144. That's 44144. You'll also get access to Man Alive outtakes, raw footage, and bonus videos you can only get there. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited today to bring you Dr. Robert Glover of No More Mr. Nice Guy. Welcome, Robert. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Shanna. It's good to talk to you.
I found your book. I can't even remember how many years ago, and it's got, 1,000 different dog years. And for those of you who have not heard of Dr. Glover, he works with men who identify as nice guys, or what we're going to talk about today is how to know whether you are a nice guy, right? If you've been someone who everybody has said, wow, you're such a great guy, I don't know why you're not single, or, if you end up caring a lot for other people. We're going to get into all of the parts of being a nice guy and also talk about that there are benefits to being a kind and respectful man in the world, but that there are also ways that you might be holding yourself back. So let me give you a quick, professional intro, and then we'll dive into the topic. So Dr. Glover is an internationally recognized authority on the nice guy syndrome. He's a frequent guest on radio talk shows, has been featured in numerous local and national publications, and through his book, online classes, workshops, podcasts, blogs, consultation, and therapy groups, Dr. Glover has helped change the lives of countless men and women around the world. And as a result of his work, Dr. Glover has helped thousands of nice guys transform from being passive, resentful victims to empowered, integrated males. And along with these personal changes have come similar transformations in their professional careers and intimate relationships. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because I would say I've been working with men for about 15 years now, and I tend to attract men who have amazing hearts. They love women. I think really I only work with men, who love and respect and care for women. But they also find themselves often being the friend or, being the caretaker, the one who is really generous and amazing, but then missing out on certain kinds of intimacy and success. So, I'd love for you to describe what you see as the nice guy syndrome, and how would a man know if he's, stuck in this place in this way?
Right. I can tell even from your introduction and how you describe your experience with nice guys, you do get it. You understand it. You've seen nice guys. And you're right. For a single guy, it's often the guy that either, rarely has a girlfriend or gets into a relationship, or when he does engage with women, he ends up in the friend zone. For the guy in relationship, it's often the guy that maybe he's attracted to a woman that's got a few issues or a few problems, or she's a diamond in the rough that needs a little polishing, and they give and give and give. And then often they don't polish up in the ways that they thought. And then the nice guy's resentful and he says, I give. When's it going to be my turn?
Right.
So you know all that. You've seen it from both sides. And I'll just state, I am a recovering nice guy. Mm-hmm. And everything I've learned about nice guys and the nice guy syndrome has come both through my own personal experience of recovery and discovering me and what works in the world and what doesn't, but also as a professional. My background is my doctorate is in marriage and family therapy. Right. So I've been working with couples for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And like you, my work has evolved really since I started focusing on nice guy syndrome and then wrote the book. For probably over 20 years, my work has been almost exclusively with men. And
And you talked about, that one of the what would I call it? One of the tenets of the nice guy syndrome is this idea that if you are good and giving and caring, that then you'll be happy and loved and fulfilled, right?
Yeah, and so really, in a nutshell, is a nice guy is a guy who internalized a belief system, usually at a very young age, sometimes later in life, but often at a young age, even meaning a few weeks, a few months, few years old, internalized a belief about self in the world based on the experiences they had with parents, with family, just in the world, but internalized a belief that said, I'm not okay just as I am. Now,
Mm-hmm.
often this isn't conscious. Oftentimes it was internalized in a young boy at an emotional level
Yeah.
before maybe even he had conscious awareness or even had verbal ability.
Yeah.
I'm not okay. So, and therefore, if you believe you're not okay just as you are, most nice guys believe a couple of things. Number one, I have to try to become what I think other people want me to be or what I should be in
Right.
order to be loved and liked and get my needs met. And I have to hide anything about me that might get a negative reaction from other people. So nice guys are pretty much living a paradigm, managing life by trying to get other people's approval and or avoid their disapproval.
Right. Which
And
is a huge weight, and most of the men who come to me in this realm, right? Men come to me for all different reasons, but most of the men who come to me because of this, they're exhausted and
yeah.
lonely and feeling the sense of, not really being loved or seen or understood for who they really are.
And you're right. And here is the paradox is true. They're not being seen and heard and loved for who they really are because they're not being their true authentic self, but
Right.
they don't know that. For
Right.
example, when I was prior to me starting to do some therapy and get into some groups and work on me, I would have introduced myself as a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. I couldn't understand why everybody didn't have that paradigm. I was trying to be different from my father, who was fairly narcissistic and
Right.
emotionally volatile and selfish. I was trying to be different from the bad men I heard women in the 60s and 70s complain about.
Yep.
I was trying to be that good guy. And the paradox is that not only is the nice guy not being himself, he's often not a nice guy because he's not being his true authentic self. He's not saying what he really wants, what he really believes, what really is important to him. He's not really saying if he's upset about something or had his feelings hurt, or
Right.
it all gets kept inside, which is dishonest. It's inauthentic. And the conclusion I came to as I really just worked on my own nice guys issues, started working with a lot of men who were coming to me for therapy, often with their partners. I came to the realization that the nice guy is not being his own true self, and that's the reason he's not succeeding or getting the love or whatever he wants in life. And
Right.
really, the main intention of recovery from nice guy syndrome is not to become a better person or not to get rid of anything, is to really discover our true authentic self and love and accept and embrace who we are,
All of it.
warts and are,
I
exactly
love
who
that
we
you
are.
just said is not to become a better person, because isn't that right? What he's been doing his whole life.
Exactly. Exactly. We've been trying to be that better person. We don't need to be a better person. We need to be us. And I have a quote I came across from a guy named Scott Stratton who does internet marketing. He wrote a book called Unmarketing.
Mm.
And in talking to people running kind of their own marketing companies, and he said, and I apply this to men in life and relationship, he said,
Yeah.
when you are being your own authentic self, you have no competition.
Uh-huh.
I love that
I
because
love
I
that.
don't have to become somebody else or be more like somebody else when
No.
I am just being me. And I've got flaws. I've got things about me that irritate people. I've got, weaknesses. I've got insecurities. But when I'm just can be all of those things and love that and
Yeah.
be that, I've got no competition. I'm me. I'm the only one like me on this
Right.
planet.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking, right. And when you're not trying to hide those insecurities, it's like, things fester in the dark, right? They become bigger, they become, or they seem like a bigger deal. Like, okay, so, and then we can't actually work on them, right? So if I have a habit of, I talk a lot or something, say I'm a man who talks a lot, I don't listen to people as much as I could. If I'm ashamed of that, then I can't talk about it. I can't grow in that way. I can't learn and connect and do better because I'm so ashamed of it that I can't even work on it. Right. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking about a lot of the men who come to me, and a big part of what we do is bring to the surface these things that they've been ashamed of, that they feel like, I can't say this to anyone. I can't show this to anyone. And I've felt in a way, really honored, like I get to love men for a living, and
Uh-huh.
it's not that I'm loving them in a kind of babying or mothering way, but just being a space where they can bring out all of those things that they've thought, oh, this makes me unlovable, this makes me shameful, and then really getting to see in the moment, oh, you're still here, and actually finding how we get to be more connected, and how I see more strength as
Yeah.
they bear some of those parts.
Yeah, and let me say more about that, because you've really struck on the foundation of how we start doing what I would call recovery from the nice guy syndrome. When I started working on my issues, before I realized I was doing recovery from the nice guy syndrome, actually, when I went to therapies, because I was married at the time, I was married to my second wife, and she basically said, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. And she said, I'd rather be with a jerk. At least a jerk would treat me bad consistently.
Oh,
And she'd been with
oh,
a and she said, but you treat me so well, and I think everything's fine
uh-huh.
until you blow up and all this, you have a victim puke, she would call it. And then all this stuff comes out, and I didn't even know you're upset at me. Or you do something to embarrass me or cut me down or hurt me when I'm not expecting it. And she finally said, I can't put up with this anymore. You got to go get therapy.
Wow.
And I thought, okay. And I went to therapy, honestly, to find out why me being a nice guy didn't make her appreciate me more.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
why it didn't make her, happier and want to have more sex with me. And so I started going, and luckily I got with some good therapists who really helped me. Like the first therapist I went to, very first session, she taught me about boundaries. And
Mm-hmm.
I was in my early 30s. In my second marriage, I had a PhD in marriage and family therapy, and I'd never heard of boundaries before.
Isn't it amazing? This is what
Yeah.
I think is so amazing, that we can go so long without actually learning about our own, relationality, or how to
Yeah.
how to be connected with other people.
How,
It's great.
how to be a healthy human. So
Yeah.
a couple of good things. The first couple of therapists I worked with were women, and one I worked with for several years and went to a men's group where she led a men's group around
Mhm.
sexuality. And that
Mhm.
was, you mentioned, you get to love these guys into loving themselves. And it was good for me to actually to work with a woman who liked men.
Yes.
And who
Yes.
wanted to empower men, because I kind of had this belief that women didn't like men and
Mhm.
thought men who were sexual were bad, and so that was helpful. But what I soon discovered in my own recovery and then working with nice guys, and I talk a lot about this in the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, is that that nice guy syndrome is, I've come to see it more than I did originally when I wrote the book. But it's two things really. It's a shame-based disorder,
Mhm.
and it's an anxiety-based disorder. And
Mhm.
I wrote a lot about the shame part of it, especially releasing toxic shame in
Yeah.
the book. And then that was 20 years ago when I wrote the book, and I've continued to work on me and with many. I just did a weekend workshop here in Seattle this weekend with 10 guys from around the world.
Mhm.
And just like in this weekend workshop I did in men's groups, I was leading 5 groups a week at one time for men.
Well.
There's a paradox that happens. Nice guys have this, as you mentioned, this toxic shame that says, I'm not okay just as I am. I'm defective.
Yeah.
So we hide those things about ourselves. We try to compensate in other ways to get love and get affection and feel valuable.
Mhm.
But that stuff still affects us and still comes creeping out, like my ex-wife used to say. It comes out when I'm not expecting it.
Right.
And there's a paradox in the therapeutic process, and you're aware of this, that the nice guy internalized this inaccurate belief based on his experiences with other people.
Mhm.
So in a sense, he's carrying, the parental critic inside of himself, and he's
Right.
telling himself negative things. And the paradox is in order to learn to love self and release toxic shame, you actually have to get acceptance of self
Yeah.
from other safe people.
Yeah.
So, for example, when a nice guy comes to a group with me or goes to a 12-step group or works with you and then reveals things about themselves that they maybe have kept hidden. And when I started working on me, I actually went to a 12-step group for sex addicts and quickly learned I wasn't a sex addict. I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict, but it was a safe place with all men. And I just started revealing everything about me that I'd ever kept hidden or kept secret or I had shame about. And none of the guys reacted negatively. They said, thanks for sharing, Robert. That was it. And then when I would go into therapy and work with my therapist or my men's groups, and I would reveal things that I was scared to death to tell other guys about. And they would all kind of look at me with compassion and nod their head. And a few others would say, yeah, me too. I've been there. And my therapist would say, Robert, that was so powerful and courageous that you shared that. And she would have a look of love on her face. And I'm going, oh, these people don't think I'm terrible for the same things I think I'm terrible. So as then, because safe people reflected back to me, I was okay. I'm flawed. I'm far from perfect. I never will be, but I was okay. I was lovable. I was acceptable. That paradox is by getting that acceptance from safe people as you reveal the depths of who you don't want people to see that you are, then you begin to accept that, oh, these things are just me. They're not terrible, and people can love me and accept me. Warts and all.
And part of what I see is that the freedom that comes from that, of then not walking around in the world attempting to either prove you're good enough, like you said, or gain acceptance, or disprove something else, or it's like there's a way that I see men, twist themselves. And actually, as I worked with women over the years, I used to say, that I help women be authentic or genuine about who they are, rather than twisting themselves or kind of making themselves into a pretzel to try to be who they think men want them to be, or whatever gender.
And it can change in every situation and with every other person you're with. Yeah.
Right. And so then the freedom that I've seen men experience as they no longer feel like I have to hide something or prove something is amazing, to just be able to sit in front of a romantic potential partner or in a business meeting and not be trying to prove I'm strong enough, I'm good enough, I'm intelligent enough, but actually be able to sit there and then have a connection with another person, instead of lost in their own heads. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. If you'll permit me, let me tell a personal story and then a story about a former client that illustrate what you just said.
Sure, please.
The personal story, I won't go into detail, but this was pretty early in when I had started going to a 12-step group and working with a therapist. And I remember an incident where I had an impulse, kind of a dark impulse, and it scared me. It was a dark sexual impulse that I did not act on, but it kind of scared me that I even thought about acting on it. And in the past, I would have just kind of kept a lid on everything and not let stuff much up into consciousness. Or if I did act on it, I'd do it real secretively. And nice guys do a lot of that, a lot of secretive behavior. So anyway, I went to my 12-step group and I shared that with the 12-step group. And like I said, everybody in the group just said, thanks for sharing, Robert. and that was it. Nobody acted, oh, you were such a terrible, perverted person. You deserve to burn in hell for eternity. Yep. And by the way, I grew up in a fundamental Christian church, so that's where that comes from. And then it just so happened that I had an appointment with my therapist, and like I said, it was a woman therapist, just like an hour after my group that day. And so I went and then I talked with her about the impulse. And she just kind of looked at me like a therapist does and said, well, let's explore that. Let's see what that's about. Let's see what story that's telling. It was a story, right? It wasn't like, oh my gosh, we've got to, deal with this. It's like, let's just explore it. And I'm thinking, well, that wasn't painful. And I thought, so I'm driving home, back to, I thought, I've talked to my 12-step group about it. No negative reaction.
Talk to my therapist about it.
I talked to my therapist, no negative reaction. I think I need to go home and tell my wife this thing that I never would have told her under any other circumstance, because I didn't want her to think I was a terrible person.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, even if she has a negative reaction, I'm 2 out of 3 is not bad. I'm doing good. So I went home and I said, I need to talk to you about something. And we went back to the bedroom, sat down in the bedroom, and I said, I need to tell you this. And I said, I've talked to my 12-step group about it. I've talked to my therapist, but I had this impulse. I didn't act on it, but I felt pretty, shameful about it.
Yeah.
I talked to them about it, and I just wanted to tell you because it seemed important that you know that about me.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, it kind of scares me a little bit, but it doesn't really surprise me. And I'm glad you told me. And she never brought it up again. And I'm thinking, and this is a woman I used to tell her middle name ought to be Overreact, because that's what she did in every situation. And she did. Me revealing after having already revealed this in a couple places. And that experience sticks with me because it was so powerful in me beginning to realize I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my impulses. I'm not my flaws. They're just a part of being human. And if I can actually look at them, reveal them, talk about them, share them with safe people, they don't do harm and they don't define me.
Yes.
And it was so powerful.
I was just thinking that, even a couple weeks ago, I had a client share with me a sexual fantasy that was not something he felt like I would actually do this, but, it came through his mind and his kind of visual mind. And he said, I've never told anyone this before. I've been way too ashamed. And as soon as we talked about it and he brought it out and we got to really look at it and, where it might be coming from and what some of those deeper desires or motivations were. And, as we checked in over the next couple of weeks, that fantasy dissipated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of them won't. Some of them are things that actually one wants to create in the world and has to find a way to do it with consent with someone else, but others,
exactly.
It's like, I've even had my own fantasies. I remember once having it wasn't even sexual, but it was like this weird image that kept coming to my mind. And I remember I thought, this is disgusting and I cannot admit to another soul that this is coming in my mind. I don't even understand why. And I was married at the time, and I finally told my husband. And as soon as I told him, it stopped appearing. It's like, right, when we don't think, oh, well, this thought is mine and it's bad and it's shameful, when it actually gets to see the light of day, it doesn't have to run us in the same way that it has been.
And that's such a good point, because I'll add now, just listening to you, that I never had that impulse again.
Really?
I've never had it again in my entire life. And like once I put it out there, it lost its power. It lost its steam. And while you were talking about your example, it made me even think. One of the beautiful things about people taking the risk and courage to reveal themselves in safe places, especially in groups, like whether it be a workshop or a therapy group, is that once one person opens up and shares, other people do as well.
Right.
And then you begin to develop community. You develop intimacy where people know each other, and we're not just at this superficial level. And that's and probably like you, I love doing this work, and both of us primarily work with men now, but like this workshop I did this weekend with 10 guys, on Friday night, they didn't know each other from Adam. Before Sunday, before we wrapped up, these guys were just like a band of brothers, and they were like revealing to each other. They were having experiences, and like they're still on a WhatsApp group, and this has been a few days ago, and they're still blowing my phone up, everybody checking in with how they're doing and what's up. These guys, by revealing themselves in a group, not only got to release a lot of their own stuff, they also got to develop a deep intimacy with a group of guys that they didn't know from Adam, a day before.
And that happens actually through the revealing, right? If you're not revealing, then our relationships kind of stay like, hey, hey bro, or hey sis, what's up? There's a shallowness that we don't experience when we share vulnerably. I've found that, men will go to the ends of the earth for each other, or, there's a deep bond that happens that then also gets to happen in a romantic relationship, in a business partnership, and builds so much trust and respect. And it's powerful.
And you're right, because I've told men that I believe the foundation for a good intimate relationship, say we're speaking heterosexual, man with woman, that a good foundation for that relationship is our connection with men. That's the foundation, because I found when men can reveal to each other, kind of like the work they do with you, the work they do with me, it develops that intimacy, that sense of safety, that openness, that vulnerability that then they can go have with women, because women scare us. When I talk with women about what I teach men, then women will start asking me questions. Well, why do men do this? Or why do men, why won't men just approach us? I'll see the man looking at me, but he won't just walk up and talk to me. And I'll go, because you scare us.
Because you're terrifying.
Women will go, why? I go, because you're scary. And they'll say, well, how come men they'll talk to us and chat and everything's going well, and I'm smiling and laughing at his jokes and touching his arm, and he won't ask me for my number or won't ask me out. They go, why do men do that? I go, because you scare us.
Well, right. And it's the same kind of thing. I've had conversations with men who've, called me, and we talk about their relationships, and they say they've been in a relationship for, 20 years and they're not having the intimacy they want. And I say, have you talked about it? And they say, no, I'm too scared. I'm too scared to talk to her. I'm too scared of her reaction, right? Which is part of what you were saying, that part of this condition or this syndrome is to seek approval outside of oneself and to try to get it, especially in a heterosexual relationship, from the woman.
Yeah. And if they can develop this ability to open up to men, where the phrase I use is, they're not trying to maintain the possibility of availability like we do with women. We men think we have to make sure the woman's happy and in a good mood all the time, or she won't want to have sex with us. So basically we're trying to manage the sexual dynamic. With men, we don't have to. Right. So we can open up, if he thinks I'm a terrible person, okay, but it doesn't matter, because we're not trying to manage the sexual context.
Right.
So if we learn to do it with men, I believe that's the foundation then that helps us do it with women.
Yes.
And it is so crucial.
I mean, I want to throw something in there. I don't know if I would call it a bone, but, one of the things I love is that I've gotten to really speak to that feels vulnerable to me, is that as a woman, some of my biggest pain has been men trying to get me back to happy, or good. And that when men have actually been able to, meet me or stay with me or just hold me in some of those intense emotions. I mean, if we're talking sexually, those have been some of the most powerful experiences of my life, to not have to be happy, but to be able to be connected and intimate in the midst of sadness or grief or, upset or rage. And so one of the things I really love working with men, kind of, I don't know if it's that next step, right after sharing with men and starting to feel safe, because you're not trying to, get this woman to still want you, right? But then to actually be able to stay in a deeper connection with a woman without it having to be about everybody's happy all the time. And
and I'm nodding my head, and probably every nice guy listening is nodding their head, because I was trained by my mother try to make sure the woman's always happy. That was my job. And I talk in the book that a lot of nice guys were basically raised with a very strong feminine influence.
Right.
Most of us didn't have a strong masculine connection. We're raised by our mothers. We go to elementary school where primarily we had female teachers. And like I've often said, just for example, just moving from third grade to fourth grade in school not only meant learning your reading, writing, and arithmetic, but how to please a woman.
Interesting.
And so since a very early age, most men our primary path to a smooth, happy life is making sure the woman around us is happy.
Yep.
And like, if mama ain't happy, nobody ain't happy.
Right. I'm realizing too, as we're talking, I think I realized this recently, but I don't know if I've ever said this out loud, but I think I'm realizing the reason I identify with this so much is because I have the counter part, the good girl syndrome, right? Trying to make men happy and trying to have everybody around me be happy. So I'm really kind of just having that aha of, oh yeah, this is why this has felt so meaningful for me, your work and supporting men with it.
And as you've found, both working with men and in yourself, that when we're trying to make other people happy, we're not being authentic. We're not really there for them. It's a covert contract, as I call it. Well, I'll try to get you back to good. I'll try to manage your emotional state, but I'm really doing it to manage my own emotional state, because I'm anxious. And I'm a codependent. I get anxious when people around me are not in a good mood or not happy, or they seem anxious or hurt, and I catch myself wanting to go into the fix mode.
Yes.
And I've learned over time, going into fix mode is not loving because it's just managing my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
What is loving is to soothe myself. First of all, take good care of me. And what that means is taking a few breaths, calming myself, being still for a minute, checking in with myself. Then,
Rather than trying to fix, you mean like, well, what's happening outside of you or in some other
yeah.
person? I've got to make that stop happening.
And then once I've checked in with me
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not reacting out of a place of trying to manage my own anxiety or manage my own shame, then I actually can decide what might be in the best interest of the person with me. Maybe
Right.
it's listening to them, maybe it's being playful with them, maybe it's giving them space. Who knows?
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to manage them to manage me, it's not loving.
I think I think it takes hearing that many, many, many times to
I'm
actually
still working
really,
on it. I'm
right?
not
Yeah. I
saying
mean, I'm still working on that too. One of the questions that I really wanted to check in about with you, especially in this time of, the Me Too era and the
that.
power dynamics. And one of the things you talk about is that nice guys, instead of following rules, have to establish their own rules. And I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about that and how men can establish their own rules, without being, I think some of the fear is, well, I don't want to be seen as an asshole. I don't want to be
Sure,
selfish.
sure.
So yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and it's timely. I'm actually working on another book that is built around something I call positive emotional tension.
Mm,
And the basic theme of it is that women have to experience emotional tension with a man in order to be attracted to him, stay connected to him, and have sexual arousal with him. Now, unfortunately, most men, especially nice guys, don't like emotional tension between them and a woman. They want everything smooth and
right.
calm. And so we don't do much that creates the kind of emotional tension that turns women on. Now, bad boys do. That's why we nice guys are always confused. Why do women say they want a nice guy? Because they
Uh-huh.
go with the bad boy. But the bad boy creates what I call negative emotional tension through his unavailability, not treating the woman well, whatever it may be. But it's still emotional tension.
Ah.
It
So
turns
you're
women on.
actually looking at how to create positive emotional
And I'm
tension.
looking at how do you create that consciously and
Yes.
lovingly.
Yes.
And in the as I'm working on this book for really at least 6 months, I've been looking for really I know what I want to talk about because I've been teaching it to men and women both for some time, but I'm looking for the hook. A good book needs a hook,
Yes.
like
Right.
No More Mr. Nice Guy. And as I was over the last few months, one of the things that I noticed is I was actually starting to feel a little anxiety because of the Me Too movement and a lot of the sensitivity going on
Yes.
between men and women around sexuality. And what
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking is about is fairly blatantly sexual, and how men can create this powerful sexual dynamic just in how they live their life and how they interact with women. But I
Yes.
also talk about it's not a technique, it's not manipulation, it's
Right.
not pickup, it's just how you are. And it naturally, authentically, or organically attracts women. And so kind of as I've been like on Facebook and just following, men's responses to Me Too, and like in general, men feel like they're being sucker punched. That
Yeah.
they're like, wait a minute,
It's
I'm
true.
not I'm not a bad guy. I haven't done bad things, but at the
Yeah.
same time, most men, because of a combination of things of poor sexual education, poor self-esteem, because of a repressed sexual society that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
because of we don't understand women and women don't understand us. Most men have probably done maybe unconsciously, inadvertently, maybe awkward or tone deaf things with women.
Oh, I like that, tone deaf. That makes so much sense.
And we weren't being predatory. We weren't being being like Harvey Weinstein or
Right.
Weinstein. But maybe we have just be inadvertently hurt women by either trying to get a woman's approval, get her to like us, get her sexually aroused, get her to want to take her clothes off with
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
And this could be both in terms of relationships that are fairly new and evolving, or it might be in a long-term relationship with a woman. We're gonna hurt each other, and
Yes.
often it's not coming out of malice; it's coming out of ignorance or drives that we don't know how to express. And
Yes.
so you mentioned the Me Too thing, and what I had a brainstorm just about a week ago that actually what I'm teaching men is really fits very well into what the women in Me Too are asking for, and that is women just want to feel safe. They don't want to be violated. They don't want to be treated badly, but it doesn't mean they don't want to be sexual. In fact, they want a space to be sexual in which they feel very safe.
Right.
And as they say, that their consent is enthusiastic and constant.
Right. And then we can actually relax and open up. And
exactly. And that's what I'm teaching men, is how to be in a way with women that creates both a sense of safety and a sense of arousal, that the woman basically just, opens up. I'm putting my arms back, just kind of opening myself, like fully vulnerable, where the woman basically says, basically, shut up, quit talking, take me. I'm ready. Let's go.
Right.
And most men don't know how to create that emotional state with women,
yeah.
and especially the safety part of it. And the irony and the paradox is, there are ways that we men can show up with women that both arouses them profoundly and at the same time makes them feel profoundly safe.
Right. That's so interesting, because often I talk about it as that we have these dials, right? I've often said head, heart, and sex, and that a lot of the nice guys, it seems to me, have the dial turned way up on their heart, open maybe 100%, and then the dial turned down on their sexual energy. And sometimes men think, well, I've got to turn the dial down on my heart to have my sexual energy turned up. And I really help them turn both of them up, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I'm getting from what you're saying is, even men with really great hearts and really open hearts and a lot of respect and care for women, there are ways that either by not listening, or like you said, by being tone deaf or trying to fix things and get a woman back to happy, there are these ways that even men who are, deeply caring and respectful and loving create an environment that doesn't feel safe for a woman to then open and relax her heart, which also then allows us to open our bodies.
Yeah, well, and it's twofold. Like you're saying, is that for the nice guy, and when I talk about what I call positive emotional tension, I tell nice guys, being nice to a woman doesn't turn her on. It doesn't create emotional tension. It may create a little bit of sense of safety, and then you become, I call it the girlfriend with a penis. She'll talk to you about anything, but it never crosses her mind that maybe you two might get naked together. Yeah. There's never even a spark of that.
Yeah.
So doing nice things for her, listening to her talk about all her problems, volunteering to help her sister move, she may take you up on all those things, but it will never cross her mind, I wonder what it'd be like to get naked with him.
Yeah.
And by being more conscious in a few ways, and it's not a matter of they close their heart down, but sometimes that means they actually have to embrace their own sexual intention. I tell guys, there's a reason why you're talking to that woman, and she actually knows the reason why you're talking to her.
Right.
You don't have to hide that. You don't have to pretend that there's a sexual context to it, that there's not a sexual context, because there is. That's why you're talking to her.
Yeah.
And she knows it, and in most cases, she's okay with that it has a sexual context. She may not go there, but she's okay with the fact that you approached her because, she's female, and that's why you're talking.
Right. And I find so many men try to turn off that desire or that feeling of pleasure in their body in order to try to be respectful, rather than feel it and let themselves be, inspired and uplifted and empowered by it, but then making really, respectful choices with it.
Yeah. And as you say, when we repress our sexual self, put the lid on it, it goes underground. And for a lot of nice guys, it goes into pornography, fantasy, masturbation, and even some other really abusive kind of stuff, because it's got a lid. And our sexuality, it's the life force of the universe.
Yes.
It's the creative force of everything. And when a man puts a lid on that, he puts a lid on his passion, his charisma, his spontaneity, and even going back to what we talked about, him not being himself.
Yeah.
I'll talk with guys about how to organically, authentically create, what I call the positive emotional tension with women. So how do you do it? They're looking for the technique.
Yeah.
And it begins with you being your authentic self.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, but me being me doesn't turn women on. And I go, no, that's not true. You've never let women see the real you. And I'll say, when you're with a woman, do you say what's really on your mind? Do you act on an impulse if you have it? Oh, no, I don't want to
offend
take
her,
that chance, or offend her, or piss her off, or do the wrong thing,
or risk
rejection.
rejection.
And I go, okay, then there's no you to turn her on. And so, for example, I tell guys the biggest turn on that that you just being you will have an effect on women. Not all women, not every woman in every situation, but it increases the odds of the woman feeling something, right?
Yes.
Having that sense of that buzz is number one. If you're honest, when people are honest, it's never boring. So if you're honest, if you have a thought, blurt it. If you have an impulse, act on it. Now, if there's no agenda or attachment to outcome, that behavior is rarely offensive. It's rarely inappropriate. Men tend to become offensive or inappropriate with women when we've got a hidden attachment to an outcome. We've got an agenda. We want this woman to like us. We want this woman to want to be sexual. And then we do stuff out of that agenda and that attachment that ends up being that tone deaf, that inappropriate stuff that actually ends up really offending women and turning them off. But if we have no agenda, if we're just being authentic and we have a funny thought and we blurt it, or we have the impulse to touch her arm or grab her hand and say, come with me, let's do this. And if we don't hold it back, not only is it safe and authentic, and the woman feels safe with that, it also creates an emotional tension that starts the woman starts feeling something inside that's interesting to her, and she wants to see maybe where that might go.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, we could keep talking for days, as I often find at the end of these podcasts, but I feel, really grateful. Like this is an amazing start. And, for you helping men see how they might even, be or have this nice guy syndrome or be acting this out without even realizing it, and bringing it to light without more shame or blame on top of it, So I'm wondering if there's any last thing you want to, for now, because maybe we can do this again, if you want to leave men with.
Yeah. Number one, yes, I'd love to do it again. This is fun. Number two, one of the things I say in the book, and I'll just reiterate it here, and it's really been the crux of what you and I have been talking about. I tell nice guys, don't try to do this alone. You didn't become a nice guy in isolation. You became a nice guy in a social context.
Yep.
And nice guys try to do everything alone because our sense of shame and defectiveness. And so we try, I'll just go fix it. I'll figure it out.
I don't want anyone to see this. I can't ask for help.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't try, the essence of releasing our toxic shame and our anxiety has to occur with safe people. So find a safe person. It can be a good friend, but it's usually a therapist, a life coach, a 12-step group, a therapy group, a mastermind group. Find someplace. I tell guys, don't try to do it with your girlfriend or your wife, because actually she doesn't feel like a safe person. And don't do it with family members. They maybe help make you this way. So find somebody who has no agenda.
Yes.
And maintaining you being exactly how you are. Find people who are okay with you going deep within who you are, revealing that, accepting it. Find safe people. That's my final words for our time today.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. And how can men find more of you?
Easy enough. Just go to drglover.com, drglover.com. I've got my online university. People can find that. I've got podcasts. I've got workshops and seminars. If they just Google Robert Glover or Google No More Mr. Nice Guy, I've got all the top spots on both of those pages. So I'm not too hard to find.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Shanna, thank you. This was fun.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.